Hey guys, Dave here from Design Upgrade Pro for H5P, and this video is going to look at the flashcard options. So just like a lot of other content types, you'll notice that we are again using the global border radius from the General Design tab. We're going to use it for the container out here as well as for the card itself. One thing to note is that this area down here with the text input and the check button, this is actually using the button border radius. We chose to do that because there is this button over here on this side, and we just thought that this made more sense to use the button border radius instead of the global one. So just note that this is the button border radius down here in this area. But the card itself and the corners to the containers will use your global border radius from the General tab. So as you can see, we've got a light purple container background. That's this first color here. And then our container text color. This is going to apply more to more things than just text. So it's going to apply to the text up here, the 1 out of 3. It's also going to apply down here for the progress bar, as well as for the next and previous icon buttons that show up down here. We didn't want to use your button colors from the buttons panel just because since we're letting you change the color of the container, the buttons might not look great on a different color container. So that's why we chose to just take this text color, and we would ensure that you'd still be able to read it on whatever background color you chose. So if you chose a darker container background color and a lighter container text color, you'd still be able to have a nice contrast for these next and previous arrows that would show up here, as well as for the progress bar. Now we do put a little bit of a translucent black background to the container of this progress bar. There's nowhere to change that, so we just add that in on our own. And then we do use a multiplier of what your global border radius is. So because this is such a small thing compared to this huge card and even the even bigger container, we just use a little multiplier here. But if you have 0 for your border radius, these edges will be actually squared off and they won't be rounded. And then if you have, I don't know, say 8, 9, 10 pixels or so or higher, it's going to look pretty rounded like this down here for that progress bar. Now, in addition to the container, you've also got the cards. And so we let you change the background color and the text color of the cards as well. So here you'll see the dark purple background color. And then right here, this text is going to be the card text color. Now with this area here, this text input and this button, for this text input, this left side is always going to be white, and it's always going to have a dark gray text color. That is not customizable in the plugin right now, so that's always going to stay white and dark gray. However, this button over here is going to just flip the colors of the card. So the background is purple, so we're going to make the text purple. And since the text of the card is white, we're going to make the background white. So we're essentially just flipping the colors of the card and using that for the button. We do also drop the opacity a little bit. You can kind of see here that the purple just gets darker when you hover over it. That's the darker color on hover is the actual card background. The default is a little bit lightened up because there's some opacity on it. So that's how we're adding a little hover effect just so you can see it change when you hover over it. The final two options are for shadow and border. So for the card itself, I have a 2-pixel dark purple border that's been applied. That's with this option down here. So if you come here and you clear this out, it will completely get rid of the border. So you won't have one at all. So if you choose a color, it's going to add a border. But if you don't choose one, no border will be applied. And we are using the border thickness, the global border thickness from the General Design tab. That's what's determining the thickness of the border if you add one. The final option for shadow. So right now there is I'm going to remove this border. Actually, give me 1 second. I'm going to remove the border, change the shadows a little bit. I'll come back and show you what it looks like. All right, and I'm back. So I made a few changes here so you could see the shadows a little bit better. I made the card background color white, as you see here, and then the card text color is purple. You'll notice, like I mentioned, that also changed this button because, like I said, we're flipping the button and using the text color as the background and the background as the text. So that's why we now have a darker button here. We also do apply, if you have a white background color or a very light background color, you'll notice we also use a translucent black, which shows up as just a gray here, but it'll just be a slightly darkened version of whatever your card background color is. That's what's going to outline the text input area here. So let's look at these shadows, this final option. So by default, H5P puts these shadows on the left and the right side of the card. And so that changes as you swap cards. You'll see here there's a shadow on the left and the right side. So that is the default, but I wanted to give you guys a couple of additional options. So we've got small drop shadow, large drop shadow, or no shadow whatsoever. So let me jump through these couple of different options and show you what they look like. All right, so I made another change here so you could see this small shadow. So now we're looking at the drop shadow small option. You'll see here it just adds a very little faint small drop shadow around the card here. So I changed the background to white so that you could see it really well. So that is the small drop shadow option. I'm going to change the color back so you can see what the large shadow looks like. So I've added the light purple background back in, and this time we've got the drop shadow large. As you'll see here, there's a much larger drop shadow that appears on each of these cards as you go towards them. One other thing to note here with these images is the images you put inside of the flashcard will also use the border radius. So everything should have a nice streamlined border radius. The container out here, the card itself, as well as any images inside of the card. And finally, I will turn this drop shadow off and show you what that looks like. And no surprise here, card shadow style set to none just removes the shadow altogether so that there isn't one on the flashcards. And that does it for all of the flashcard options.